With our user interface built, we're ready to add some functionality to the app. And before we start that, it's probably worth commenting our code to ensure we know what each of these elements of code are, or segments of code are, at a glance. So for starters, heading time, or heading current time, start and end time with progress bar, and then we might just throw into here general information. That way we know what parts of the code we're working with and what they do and what their purpose is. So the first thing we need to do when we're adding functionality is to ensure that we have some information that is either inputted by the user or manipulated by the application. So above the body, but below the opening bracket for the content view, we're going to add in a variable at state var current time, which is going to equal a date. And that is just the current date. So I'm just going to copy that and place it into our heading to show the current date and time. While that was actually the same information, we're aiming to update this current date and time continuously in order to ensure that the clock stays up to date. So the next variable we need is the start time. That's also going to be a date. However, this is going to be changed when we actually start the exam. So while the app opens and it gives us a time of 9:12, the exam might not start for another 15 minutes, in which case this needs to be updated when the start button is pressed. Next will be the end time. Now, we don't really need an end time as long as we know the duration of the exam. So at state var duration is going to be a double, which equals 90 to start with for a 90-minute exam. The reason why it needs to be a double is to ensure that we can use it without adding time interval. So I'm going to put my duration into my working time. String interpolation is done by using a slash that's above the return key on your keyboard. So now we have the duration and the start time, we can have the computer work out the end time, which is going to be, again, a date with brackets underneath. And the code that goes into here will be the calculations to work out the end time. Now, we already have this by taking the end time. And we'll place end time here while we're there. We can paste that into our code here. So we're going to use, rather than the date, or the current date, that's when we're opening the app, we're going to use the start time and add 90 minutes. We need to return that anytime the application asks for the end time. So when the start button is pressed and the start time is set, the end time will be requested by the application, and it will take the start time, add 90 minutes, and return that as the value. So the next thing we need then is our var 10-minute warning time, which again is going to be a date, which will be the exact same code as our end time, except rather than 90, well, actually we shouldn't be using 90, we should be using the duration. So 60 seconds multiplied by the duration, which is 90. We're going to do the duration minus 10, which will be our 10-minute warning. To ensure this is calculated first, we put brackets around it. So that will subtract the 10 minutes from our duration, multiply it by 60 seconds, and add it to our start time. All automated, so no one has to do any additional work. So that will go into our 10-minute warning, and rather than date, adding interval, we'll do 10-minute warning time. We'll just resume this to ensure that we've got everything working. And sure enough, we do. The only downside at the moment is we've actually got a lot of decimal places here due to the fact that the duration is a double. So we'll go into our duration. We'll just take out this code and make another variable called working time display, which will be a string. Now, string is essentially text and what's displayed inside a text type. We'll paste that in and return that. But we don't return the duration as is because it's obviously quite long with decimal places. So we use string and convert our double to a string with the format of %0f, which is a piece of code that will ensure it is 0 decimal places, converting the duration and adding minutes. So we got the working time, which is a string of the duration with 0 decimal places, and adding the word minutes to the end. So we can use working time display inside our text. We'll try that one again. There it goes. Rightio. So we now have an interface that has information that is more current. And now we're ready to add the actual functionality that will manipulate this data.